So many people say they don't like networking, but they recognize that it's important to build their business. Networking is more about farming than it is about hunting. It really is about cultivating relationships. Looking for a job, getting referrals, you can't be desperate. Desperation is not referable. So be patient. Networking is more about farming. You got to make connections. You got to build relationships, and you got to get out there. It's not called net sit or net eat. It's called network. So you got to go out there. And you got to work your networks, and don't expect immediate results. It takes time.
Helping you find your new way forward to the best years of your life. This is a New Way Forward podcast with your host, Paul Long.
There are three keys, fundamental keys to success. Number one is networking. Number two is networking. Number three is networking. That's right. Networking, whether you're looking for a job or to start a business or an enterprise or be self-employed or start a movement, whatever, you need other people. You need to connect with the right people and get them on board. That's called networking. Yet so many people either don't do it, or they're afraid of it, or they do it in a disastrous way that's not going to help them. Well, just watching this interview will change all of that for you. You will learn how to do it the right way, and you're going to learn from probably the number one person on planet Earth that can help you, Dr. Ivan Misner. In fact, he is known as the father of modern networking. He's the founder and chief visionary officer of BNI, which is the world's largest business networking organization. They've got over 10,000 chapters throughout the world. He is a gold mine of information. And let's start with the most fundamental point of all, of why is networking so critical?
Well, networking is, I think, extremely important in order to be successful. In one of my books, I surveyed 12,000 people, and one of the questions we asked was, has networking played a role in your success? 92%, it was just under 92% said yes to that question. When have you ever seen 92% of any group of people say yes to anything? You can't get that many people to agree to anything. Yet the overwhelming majority, and by the way, this was a survey that was open to the business public, and it was global. So it wasn't just people in my organization in BNI. It was a global survey open to the public. And that to me is amazing. So many people say they don't like networking, but they recognize that it's important to build their business.
Well, sometimes it really comes down to the fundamentals, and that's what I wonder if people know what they're supposed to do and how it. By comparison, tell me how you see a lot of people kind of failing or falling short, and then we can get into some of the must-dos.
Yeah. Listen. A lot of people are falling short when it comes to networking. People oftentimes, they just don't have a clue what they should be doing to build a powerful personal network. And the most common one that I see is where people use networking as a face-to-face cold calling opportunity. They meet somebody and they say, "Hi, my name's so-and-so, let's do business." And they're trying to jump right into doing business as opposed to building a relationship. I'll never forget, I did a keynote in London years ago, 900 people in the audience. It was an all-day affair. And when I finally had a chance to speak, not quite the end of the day, but close to it, I stood up and I said, "How many of you are here today hoping to maybe just possibly sell something?" And Paul, 900 people raised their hands. I said, "Great, thank you." Second question, how many of you are here today hoping to, maybe just possibly buy something? No one raised their hands.
Right.
Not one single person. This is what I call the networking disconnect. People show up to networking events wanting to sell, nobody's there to buy. And is it any wonder that some people don't like networking? Because when you go to networking events, people are selling to you. And you feel like you have to go home and get a shower because you've been slimed. And so that's doing it wrong. So people then say to me, well, then why go if you're not there to sell? Here's why you go to networking events: to work your way through the VCP process. VCP, visibility, credibility, profitability. First, you have to be visible. People have to know who you are and what you do. Then, and only then, can you get to credibility, where people know who you are, they know what you do, and they know you're good at it. That one takes time. Building credibility takes time. Then, and only then, when you've built credibility, can you move to profitability where people know who you are, they know what you do, they know you're good at it, and they're willing to refer business to you. And this is a process, not a formula. It's not visibility plus credibility equals profitability, because that's not true necessarily. It's a process. You move from visibility to credibility to profitability. And by the way, it starts with invisibility, a fourth level that I hadn't mentioned, but it starts with invisibility because, you know, when you meet someone once and you don't see them again for a year, you've been invisible to them. They don't know who you are or what you do. And I see so many people with this networking disconnect concept where they try to jump over visibility, they try to jump over credibility, they want to get right to, you know, getting referrals from people. And I call this, in one of my books, I call this premature solicitation, which you don't want to say fast 3 times, it'll get you in trouble. So, you know, that's what you don't do, is the disconnect. What you do is go to networking meetings to create visibility with people you don't know, to create credibility with those that you know and you want to build the relationship with, and to continue profitability with the people that you're in a referral relationship with.
And I would think in terms of looking for prospects, you know, wanting to make a sale or whatever, I mean, this also applies, you know, if people are looking for a job or a career change or to be a gig worker, you know, freelance or whatever. Is it the same process? And if so, what is the best method to follow that VCP process?
So it is the same method. However, there is, when it comes to employment or looking for a job, in some ways it is a little bit different, because there's a Gronovetter's The Strength of Weak Ties, the research that he did on the strength of weak ties. And a lot of people will throw that at me in terms of referrals, and they're dead wrong on referrals, because his research was based on employment. And weak ties will not help at all, or hardly at all, with a referral, because people want to refer people they know, like, and trust. But a job, they're way more likely to refer somebody that they don't know real well, with the caveat, hey, look, Paul, I know you're looking for somebody. I met somebody who's, you know, looking for a job. I don't know them. I can't tell you a whole lot about them, but I know they're looking, and would you like me to make an introduction? So people are a lot more likely to do that with employment. So VCP applies, but the truth is, just the visibility piece when it comes to looking for a job can actually work pretty well because of the strength of weak ties.
So, you know, certainly from my knowledge, and even an interview on New Way Forward with Dr. Natalia Wachinsky, who's a global personal branding expert. That's visibility. That's, like, for instance, on LinkedIn, you know, having a good profile, having a good picture, and posting or sharing just to let people know that you're out there and what you're capable of. It's all honest. It's not trying to be some movie star or something. So when it comes to this first step of the process, especially for people who are starting out, whether they're starting a business, whether they're looking for work or a career change, which, by the way, like you said, you start early. If you're thinking about it, you start now. What are some of the ways and methods, whether it's digital or in person, for you to really get that visibility portion going?
Let's talk about this in networking in terms of employment in general. There are a number of things I recommend, and you can find an article that I wrote on my blog at ivanmisner.com's 6 Steps to Find a Job Through Networking. So some of the things that you want to keep in mind is, first, you got to get your mindset right. Desperation is not referable. Let me repeat that one. Desperation is not referable. So if you're depending on your network to speak highly of you, then you want to make sure that you don't come across as desperate, because they're not going to refer you easily. Second thing I'd recommend, and this actually relates to networking, because if they're going to refer you, one of the first things, and you probably know this, you're in the field, image check your social media. Because before I refer somebody, the first thing I do, if somebody says, hey, I'm looking for this job, and I said, yeah, I think I know somebody that might have that, give me your name, and I'll possibly make an introduction. First thing I do is I go look at their social media, because that's what potential employers will do. When I was hiring, I've gone from being King Arthur for my company, leading the charge, to Colonel Sanders. I'm now the spokesperson for the company. But when I was King Arthur with the business I started, I remember I would check out some people's social media before I hired them. And I saw one guy who was throwing out the F-bomb like every post. And I'm thinking, no, I'm not going to hire this guy. He just wasn't thinking. And so now I check social media before I refer someone. So image check your social media. Start with your current relationships. Who are the people that you already know? Before you start asking people you don't know, who do you know? Start with friends, family, business contacts, in person or on LinkedIn or via social media. Facebook has kind of redefined what a friend is. So I'm talking about real friends, not Facebook friends. I have 5,000 Facebook friends and then 180,000 followers on Facebook. They're not my friends. They're Facebook friends, and there's a difference. So reach out to people that you are really legitimately at credibility with, personally or professionally, and start with them before you start going outside there. Start with that concentric, it's concentric circles. So you start with the people you like, family, and then close friends, and then maybe friends that aren't real close, but they're still friends, where you could reach out to them and say, hey, I'm looking to start. Either I'm looking to start a business, or I'm looking for a new job. This is the kind of work I'm looking for. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to those people. So before you start asking, strangers that you meet at a networking event, start with your existing connections. Inventory your other connections, people that you don't really think that if you ask them, are we friends? They'd say, what? No, I don't know you. If they were being honest, I don't really know you. Inventory those other connections. So it's okay to reach out to them, because it's the strength of weak ties, which really works for employment as opposed to referrals. So inventory it and then start reaching out to those contacts. Visit organizations in the industry that you want. That's hands-on networking. The purpose of getting work in the field that you're looking for. Visit those organizations and make connections there. And then once you get that referral, those are 6 suggestions. Once you get a referral, make sure to research your prospective employer, so you're not walking in cold. There's nothing worse. I would interview some people and they're like, explain, what is BNI? And I'm like, really, man? There's this thing called the internet. You might have wanted to get on there, check with Monsieur Google to see what is BNI before you come in for a job interview. When I was much younger, didn't have so much gray hair, I was looking for work. I always did whatever I could to research the company. And that really took research. It meant going to the library sometimes to figure out who was this company that I was going to be doing. And then here's a really interesting technique, which doesn't work at higher level jobs. So this may not be relevant to most of your people, but I recommended it to my daughter when she was first looking for work, and it works. Offer to do a working interview. Have you ever heard of those?
No. What does that mean?
So again, it doesn't work, if you're going to be a manager of something, but it works if you're going to, work. It was an olive oil company that she went to work for, a retailer she wanted to work at. And I said, just offer to do a working interview. And of course, she's like, what is that? I said, look, just tell them that you'll work, you're happy to work all day. They don't have to pay her anything, so that they can see her work ethic. So, and just tell them, you can see my work ethic. You can see me in action, and it won't cost you anything. I'll just volunteer my day. Now, oftentimes they'll actually pay the person anyway, because there are often employment issues about, just using labor like that. But I'll tell you what they did. They said, okay, we're doing an event. Come take photographs. There was no labor law issues because she was volunteering to take photos, and they could see her work ethic. And she took great photos, and they hired her. they hired her because she often offered to volunteer her time so that they could really observe her in action. So I think something like a working interview for some levels, lower level jobs is brilliant. And I've recommended to others who have gotten the job doing that.
Well, and that kind of brings up a second. That brings up a second thing, or something related to that, because I remember learning ages ago, and I know with my sons, who are in their 20s for looking for stuff. I said, you approach somebody looking for a job, looking for a sale, whatever, and it's like immediate defense mechanism goes up. But if you ask someone for help, like I had a co-anchor many years ago, and she was looking to crack into a market, and she sent her tape out to news directors who got inundated with tapes, run away. But she'd say, could you look at my tape and tell me if you think I'm ready for this size market? And he suggests, could you help me? And of course, one of those news directors hired her, and she's still on the air in that city.
That's nice. Another variation of that is to say, do you know someone who might know someone?
Exactly.
It's a variation of that, and that works really well because you're not putting them on the spot. Hey, do you know anybody that might be looking for the kind of work I do? But do you know anyone who might know someone for the kind of work? And of course, if they know someone, they're going to go, well, I do. Oh, that's great. They're going to do that automatically. And then otherwise, what they'll do is let's say they don't have someone, then they're really going to start thinking, do I know anybody that might know someone in that profession? And that's a whole different thought process. Do you know anyone makes you think differently than do you know anyone that knows anyone? Because if you ask, do you know anyone that knows anyone, you think of yourself as well. You would include yourself in that. Does that make sense?
I like that because I had said to my sons, always end any opportunity with saying, do you have a name? Do you have somebody else you think that would be worthwhile to talk to? But in talking with my oldest about this interview last night, when he moved out to another major city, I really want to try living out there, went out there without a job. And I was proud of him. I couldn't believe the amount of networking events that he went to, and he presents himself very well. But he said, I felt so frustrated because all these people who I was saying, if you know something, I felt like I got nowhere with, even though I felt like I was doing it. I did everything you said, Dad. Oh, we know that story. What?
Oh, gosh, believe me, I've gotten that from my kids.
So not all of them. Is there a better way to do that? Or is it also, watch your expectations as to, how fast or likely it'll happen?
Well, networking is more about farming than it is about hunting. It really is about cultivating relationships. And so I do get people who are in their 50s and 60s who, and younger, but I mean, people who've been around a while who say, I lost my job and I'm, I need to start building my network. Ooh, wow. Okay. You build your network throughout your career. And so you maintain contacts. Now, having said that, I usually quote them the old Chinese proverb, when's the best time to plant an oak tree? And the answer is 20 years ago. When's the second best time? Okay, today. So then that's when I say, okay, so referrals, you don't, looking for a job, getting referrals, you can't be desperate. Desperation is not referable. So be patient. Networking is more about farming. You got to make connections. You got to build relationships, and you got to get out there. It's not called net sit or net eat. It's called network. So you got to go out there and you got to work your networks, and don't expect immediate results. It takes time.
So I'd love for you to riff a little bit more about the farming versus hunting. So what does that mean in terms of process? And you might want to go back to VCP, but
it is VCP. It's farming is about building the relationship. And so how do you build the relationship? Well, one of the first things that you do to go a little bit deeper in building a relationship is try to do one-to-ones with people. Where, if you're looking for a job, it's a little harder to get a one-to-one unless you're asking to meet with them to get some advice. A lot of people are willing to give advice to young people, one-time kind of thing. But if you're in business and you are looking to build a business relationship with somebody, one-to-ones are really, really powerful and absolutely necessary. As part of the networking is more about farming than it is about hunting. And so let me give you a technique that I recommend for doing one-to-ones. I call it the gains exchange, GAINS. I write about it in several places on my blog, ivanmisner.com. Just do a search on gains exchange and you'll find material on it. It stands for goals, accomplishments, interests, networks, and skills. And the idea is I'll share my goals, you share your goals. I'll share my accomplishments, you share your accomplishments. I'll share my interests, yours interests. Networks, skills. Now, why is this important? It's important because you want to find overlapping areas of interest. That's what this is all about, is to find overlapping areas of interest. I remember when I first experimented with this in the 90s, it was in a book I wrote back then. And before I wrote the book, I was trying to find a technique. And so I had a BNI meeting and they were willing to play with me a little bit. And I said, okay, I'm going to test this thing out. It's called the Gains Exchange. And I gave it to everyone. And I gave it to two guys. And everyone had it, but these two guys, one raised his hand. I went over and said, yeah. He said, we don't want to do this. I said, okay, why? He said, I swear, this is what he said, because it's weenie. That's why it's weenie. Like, it's weenie. What do you mean? He said, it's silly. Why should we do this? Like, okay, I have a very specific reason, but please do it. And if at the end you don't like it, you can put in the survey, spot, this was weenie. It was silly. We didn't like it. And they grumbled and said, yeah, okay, fine. So they did it. Now, these two guys had been in this BNI group for almost a year. They'd never done business together. They didn't get past interests. They got the goals, accomplishments, interests. Now, everybody finished except them. They got to interests and that was it. They were so immersed in the conversation because turns out they were both soccer coaches for their sons' soccer teams, about the same age. That was it. That's all they talk about for the rest of the session was, what are some of the coaching techniques you use? Here are some of the ones I use. Hey, would you mind scouting for me? I'll scout for you. I'll videotape, you videotape. They were just so interested in that topic that's all they spoke about. And then when they filled the survey out, they're like, no, this worked great. Never mind. But here's the powerful thing. They'd never done business with each other for almost a year. And within months, they had both referred business to each other. And I asked them why they thought that was. And they said, you know what, honestly, it's because we kind of cared for each other. We built a relationship. And when you build a relationship with someone, you don't want to let them down. And, I really went out of my way to find referrals for him. And he did the same for me. And that's why one-to-ones are really important. I did a survey. One last thing. I did a survey. No, I'm sorry. I didn't do a survey. I did a podcast on a survey that was done in Europe. As part of a university study where they tracked one-to-ones being done in a region of BNI. And they found that they compared people who did one-to-one a month to people who did 4 one-to-ones a month. So 1 a month versus 1 a week. The people who did 1 a week passed twice as many referrals as the ones who did one a month. But here's what's even more important. They received twice as many referrals as the people who did only one-to-one a week. So we tell people, you want to double the amount of business you get? Do one-to-one a week.
The gains exchange.
Yeah.
That's absolutely brilliant. Because the other things that come to my mind is that, it's interpersonal dynamics and relationships 101. If you want somebody to like you first of all show that you like them and that you find commonality, you find common interest. And you're absolutely right. Just with those two gentlemen you were talking about, because there was a mutual interest, there was that trust factor, there was that commonality, and it was the process that made it just that next person coming up to me. And by the way, that's even a segue into the other point, and that's going to some of these new network events and the do's and don'ts on it, because to your informal survey early on, everybody's there to network, but no one wants to be networked.
Right.
And
Everybody wants to sell, but nobody wants to be sold to.
exactly. And so, as a producer, I put on these big events and everything, and more often than not, people were only showing up to network. It's like, well, we do have some good content going on here.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, then, because network events are so huge. And by the way, I'll also say that the dynamics, as I know them, because I've been to a couple of BNI meetings, Business Networking International is what the acronym stands for.
It's actually Business Network International.
What did I just say? Networking.
Networking.
My apologies. Business.
It's okay, but our trademark is BNI.
BNI, right. BNI is set up for this very thing, to make it work the way that you're talking about. And I thought
weekly meetings, a structured process. It's all about building relationships.
And that's the beauty of it. You go there, you meet people, but the way that it's structured is enabling for everyone to succeed at what they're there to do. And by the way, knowing that you're going there to do that, then all of a sudden makes it all okay. I mean, someone
but you still have to build a relationship.
Was talking to me, and obviously I did not need her services, but it was still engaging and interesting.
Yeah.
So when you go to a networking event, the do's and don'ts of, especially if most of the people you don't know, what are the things you want to do? I mean, what's the mindset? And also, everybody's always uncomfortable over, I hate walking up to people. I don't know what to say. Do I do small talk?
Yeah.
What's your guide?
So one of the first things that I recommend is that when you walk into a room, observe the room. And you're going to look at rooms completely different from now on. Anyone who watches this video, you're going to look at a room completely different. People who are standing around the room, let's say two people talking, when they're standing like this, face to face, perpendicular to each other, you're not going to be able to break into that conversation, dismiss that dyad immediately. People who are standing like a triangle, you're not going to be able to break into that conversation at all. So what you want to do is observe the room and look for open twos, people that are standing just slightly askew, talking to one another, or open threes. Like this, or an open four where there's just an open group where there's a spot, and then slide into that spot. This works even for introverts, especially, and this is counterintuitive, but the larger the group, the easier it is for an introvert to slip in.
Really?
Because it's like, yeah, because they're like unnoticed. You got two people and you slide into that, and it's like, you can't hide behind anyone. But you slide into a larger group, it's actually a little easier to slide in. And then at some point, somebody's going to say, so tell me, who are you? What do you do? And so look for open twos, open threes, open groups whenever you walk into a room. This is a subtle but significant technique to start dialogues with people. It's also a great technique to use if you're running events, to teach people how to stand when they're networking. And this comes out of my book. You can find, I'm almost positive this is in my blog. Just look for open twos, open threes. But you can also find it in my book, Networking Like a Pro, second edition of Networking Like a Pro. There's a graphic in there, and you're welcome to, as long as you quote the book, you're welcome to use the graphic. Anyone. And so you want to train your people, if you're running networking events or meetings, even conferences that have open networking, you want to train everyone at the very beginning to stand in open twos, open threes, open groups. And it's amazing how it works. I mean, I tested this too with a chapter that, the feedback they were getting from people is that they were kind of standoffish. I said, well, I'm going to teach you a number of things, but let's just start with this. Always stand in open twos, open threes, open groups to make it really easy for people to feel. You want to make it feel inclusive. That's the only change they made. And all of a sudden their surveys start coming back as, I don't know what it is about this group, but for some reason they're really easy to start a conversation with people. And it just turned on a dime just by them making that one change. And it works. It really does. I remember speaking at an event. I talked about open twos, open threes, and I'm standing talking to some guy afterwards, and we're standing like this. And he looks at me and he goes, Ivan, we're in a closed too. I'm like, oh yeah, right. Thank you. So we open up. Within a moment, Paul, within a moment, boom, third person comes in. And we look at each other. The first guy and I were like, close 3. And then we open up, boom, 4, boom, 5, boom, 6. We got that circle up to like 8 or 9 people within 2 minutes because we kept it open. It's a subtle technique, but it's the first thing to think about when you go to a networking event. The second thing is, remember that a good networker has 2 ears and 1 mouth and should use them both proportionately. You should really develop good listening skills and learn how to ask questions. A good networker is like a good interviewer. You're asking me questions and you're just letting me go, and I'm talking, I'm trying to answer the question, but you're giving me plenty of opportunity to do that. That's what a good networker does. And so a lot of people think that introverts are bad at networking. Introverts think they're bad at networking. No, you're not. If you're an introvert, you're not bad at networking. You could be potentially great. Now, you may have a hard time meeting people, so you really need to look for those open twos, open threes. But an introvert, they listen much better. Extroverts, they don't have a problem, meeting people. Their problem is they speak, and what's their favorite subject? What do you think their favorite subject is, Paul?
Not them or me.
It's themselves. So, they like to talk about themselves. So, extroverts are not necessarily great networkers unless they train themselves to ask questions and listen. So, look for the open twos, open threes, ask questions, get people to talk. And then when you have a chance to speak, give a unique selling proposition that passes the eyebrow test. Okay, here's the eyebrow test. A good friend of mine, Sam Horn, shared this with me. She wrote the book Pop, and Someday is Not a Day of the Week. I love that title. So here's the eyebrow test. If you say something that makes people's eyebrows scrunch like that, you've confused them. Whatever it is you said, they go like that. They don't get what you're talking about. But if you say something and their eyebrows do this, you got their attention.
You got my attention. My eyebrows naturally run. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When I said the eyebrow test,
what you want. That's brilliant. I love that because it's just like, oh, really? And even like in social media and such, you want the, oh, really? That's what grabs people and interests them. And if it's scrunch, it's doubt or yeah.
Don't get it. Yeah. So whatever you say, practice it and observe their responses. And, when you have a unique selling proposition where people's eyebrows go up, then that's a good one.
And how hard a sell do you do it? And I mean, there's always the context of it now. If it's like a job fair, if it's an intentional thing, yes, you're there to pitch yourself, pitch your business, and not just job fair, but whatever, where it's a trade show, let's say. Yes, you're there to pitch your product, your business, your enterprise, being a gig worker, whatever. But
if you're behind the table and they're coming up to your table, then it's appropriate to pitch.
To just go, here's what I've got to offer. But if it's more of that kind of social gathering thing,
don't pitch.
How hard do you go?
You don't go at all. Because the old expression, it never hurts to ask.
Yes.
It's dead wrong. It's absolutely wrong. Now, asking, again, going to the strength of weak ties, employment, different issue. We're talking about referrals. If you ask before there's a relationship, you're never going to have a relationship. You know why? Because the person's going to be put off. That you're asking for, a good contact, you're asking for business, you're asking for a referral, and they don't even know you. You can absolutely ask too soon. So you got to wait and remember the VCP process. Where am I with this person? I'm at invisibility. If I'm at invisibility, I'm not going to pitch them. I'm crazy if I pitch them. I'm at visibility. I'm still too early. I'm at credibility. Okay, let's have a discussion. But the truth is, if they're interested in what you have to offer, by the time you hit credibility, they're going to tell you. Tell me more about what you do, because I might be interested. But people go to networking events and they're trying to sell. They're using it as a face-to-face cold calling event. You'll get some sales, but even a blind squirrel can find a nut. You'll stumble over business, but that's not what networking is about. Networking is about building relationships and getting referrals. And it's the farming, it's the, people referring you as opposed to you going out there and hunting, killing what you need for the week.
Yeah, it would also, to kind of keep this going, it would almost seem too, and again, every environment's different, and what you're pitching, whether it's yourself or whatever your endeavor is, or your product or whatever, that it would also seem at the very least, and I know just in trying to make some contacts that weren't to specifically sell something or sell myself, but maybe to start forging a relationship. But just taking the approach of at least finding that commonality with that person and the legitimacy of me doing some sort of appropriate follow-up. In other words, I'm not there to land the big fish. I'm there to get access to a private pond. A terrible analogy, but you take my point. What do you think?
So let's talk about follow-up. So let me give you a technique on follow-up. I call it the 24/7/30 technique. 24/7/30. Within 24 hours, you meet somebody, whether it be online, digital, it's different than like on LinkedIn or something, but you actually meet somebody online or personally. Within 24 hours, what you want to do is reach out to them and just say, hey, it was really great to meet you at the such and such event. I enjoyed our discussion on whatever. And so I always try to take notes on anybody that I'm going to, that I want to get back on. So, when they walk away, and I have one of their cards, I'll ask people for their card and I'll write on the back, which, by the way, in some countries, bad form. You can't write on cards in mostly Asian countries. So have a little notepad and just keep some notes. And so when you send them an email or go crazy and do something that nobody does anymore, send a card, send something through the mail.
No, you mean actually send a written personal
Yes. What a crazy idea that is.
That is shocking.
I know, but nobody does that. And so when you get that, it's, I like, in the United States and in some other countries, there's a program called send out cards. I'm a client, I don't sell it, but I'm a client. It's a great program where you can send a card through the mail, but you do it online. So you type it all up online and you hit send, and then the person actually gets a physical card through the mail. It's a great service. And sending something through the mail, I think, is very, very powerful. But you do that within a day. Get it out and say, hey, it was really nice meeting you. I hope our paths cross again. Don't sell to them. Don't sell to them. Within 7 days, connect with them on social media. And one of the things you might want to do when you're actually talking to them is find out what social media platform do they like? Facebook, LinkedIn. I literally, just before we started this interview, I was on Clubhouse. And so, you're on Clubhouse, you're on LinkedIn, you're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, where are you? And make a note of that or write it down, mental note or write it down, and then connect with them there. And once you connect with them there, maybe comment on some of their posts, follow them, follow what they're up to, what they're interested in, and don't sell to them. Oh, and let me add one other thing. I'll see if I can do this part quickly. I learned from my kids that it's important to communicate with my children the way they want to be communicated with, not the way I wanted to communicate with them. So, I like Facebook. I'm really, really more active on Facebook than the others. But what if the person's more active on Instagram? Then go there. And you may say, well, I'm not active on Instagram. Well, then you don't want their business, because if you want to connect with them, you got to go where they are, not where you want to be.
Amen.
And I learned that from my kids.
That's that deferential point of it. And in fact, a very good technique too on LinkedIn, people you haven't even met, and I've had this happen before, is that when I start following them, like on LinkedIn, let's say, and I'm responding, I'm making thoughtful comments, and I'm sharing their content, that's legitimate for me to do it. I'm not just automatically doing it.
Right.
Well, lo and behold, the author of this book, Jay Samit, who, all of a sudden we're exchanging emails and such. So that really works. But you're right.
You're building a connection, relationship.
They are. Yes.
Yes. And I learned that from my kids because my eldest, she wouldn't answer the phone, but she'd respond to a text. And my next child wouldn't answer a phone, respond to a text, but she would message me on WhatsApp. My next child wouldn't do either of the three, but he was on Steam, an online game program. So I went out and bought a game so that I could instant message my son and he'd respond immediately. And I learned from them, I got to go where they are, not where I am, if I want to actually have a conversation with them. And so within 7 days, connect with them on their favorite social media. And don't sell to them. And within 30 days, 24/7/30, within 30 days, reach out to them. Say, hey, we met a month ago. I had a great conversation. I've been following some of the stuff that you're doing on social media. I love that post you did the other day. And I'd love to get together either via Zoom or in person. I'd love to get together and have a one-to-one and learn more about what you do. And then if they say yes, you have the one-to-one, and don't sell to them. I call it a sales seizure. People just can't help themselves. They're in that one-to-one and they start pitching. Don't pitch, do something like the gains exchange where you're learning about each other. This is what I mean when I say networking is more about farming, not hunting.
That's brilliant. And by the way, this technique works because I used it with Dr. Misner in getting in touch with him and getting him on this program, because you were on a kind of closed group discussion that I was on, and within 24 hours, I sent you that note, so on and so forth. So it definitely, it definitely works. So a lot of people of all ages, and certainly people who are quote unquote older, I mean, in Silicon Valley, that means 40, 50, 60, whatever. They're not just looking for jobs. I mean, they're starting up businesses, they're starting up enterprises, or they're selling things, or even selling themselves, a la gig working, freelancing, contract working. And so much of what you've succeeded at is helping people with networking and selling things, including selling themselves. So you've given a lot of good techniques and ideas here, but what would you say is like probably, if you're trying to sell the business, to sell an entrepreneurial idea, get more business for yourself. Beyond these techniques, what is it that you really wish people would realize and put a little bit more heart and soul and time into?
Well, I think one of the things, if we're talking about in general for a successful business, I think you want to be successful in business, you got to do 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times. And I see way too many business people doing 1,000 things 6 times. If I have any superpower at all as a business person, it is that I am a dog with a bone. I will take some concept and work it and work it and work it and work it until I get it to work well. And by the way, it doesn't have to be 6, it could be 5, it could be 7. But what I find happening, and I keep this here in my desk drawer because I talk about this with people a lot, people are constantly chasing bright, shiny objects. It's like, ooh, that's something new. Let's try this. They're chasing something else. They're looking for some magic pill that will change their business. Look, if you ever find that magic pill, somebody tell me, because I'm a 20-year overnight success. It took me 20 years to build my business. It's about good choices and hard work. And it's about finding a handful of things that you do over and over and over again consistently. What are those things? Well, it kind of depends on your business. But you use programs like this to find people that resonate with you, to figure out what are those things that you should be doing over and over and over and over and over and over again. And that's the way you get successful. I mean, look at BNI. We have 10,400 weekly meetings all around the world. Every week, 10,400 meetings. That is consistency over time. Timed repetition following a system and a process. And that's why last year we passed 18 billion with a B, $18 billion worth of business for our members.
And that was it's just like the concept of blocking and tackling, knowing what you're good at and what you're not, or knowing what you should be doing and what you should be hiring other people to do. and staying fundamental. How do you do that? Because I know sometimes, even for myself, and I've been fortunate in that some of the things that I help create and develop and execute from production standpoint, whether it's videos or live shows or car reveals or stuff. A success factor for me was knowing what I was good at and what I didn't and wasn't, or what I should be doing, not doing, and bringing in those experts with it. That's one thing, but sometimes even in this endeavor, I have a hard time kind of sorting out what those 1 or 6 things are that I should be solely focused on and not the other ones. How do you do that?
By using people that you trust to talk about what you want to look for are the key performance indicators, your KPIs. What are the key performance indicators for your business? And then everything you do should be directly related to that. Everything you do should have a direct and dramatic impact on your key performance indicators. And what happens is when you start getting off track, doing things that aren't part of the normal system to operate your or to move your KPIs forward, that's when you get off track, and you use your mentors for that. I mean, I'll give you an example. I had a franchise at BNI who was one of the top 10 in the world, And he said, I got this great idea. I want to start doing mixers once a month. And it was in a town that's known for parties. And he said, I want to do mixers, and I'm going to invite people to the evening mixer because this is a party town. We like to party down. It's going to be good. People will come, and then we're going to refer them to BNI chapters, and then they're going to go to the BNI chapters and they'll join. And I said, man, don't do that. Seriously, don't do that. I've done it. It's a distraction. You get people to come to an evening event. All of our meetings tend to be in the morning, and they're every week, not once a month. You're going to see something completely different, and then it's a double sale. You get them to come to the evening event, they think that's it. And then when they learn it's something different, they're not going to come. It's a double sale. Don't do it. And oh, by the way, it takes a lot of bandwidth away from the things you should be doing. He said, no, this will work. Well, we're a franchise organization, so I can't make them not do something. I mean, if they're going to do it, and he did. He went from being in the top 10 within 1 year to being in the bottom fourth. And he sold his franchise in the bottom fourth instead of the top 10. He could have made 3 times as much money. At least twice as much money. And, when a mentor who's successful tells you, don't do that, then don't do that.
Listen, anything you're doing, someone else has done it. And
most likely.
Learn the lesson.
Or some variation of it.
Exactly. And by the way, I'll throw in masterminding too. I have a couple of colleagues, and in fact, one of them I do believe is a BNI member. And this is somebody who they're doing their thing. I'm doing mine. We're not connected financially. We aren't close friends. We aren't family members. And once every 6 weeks or so, we get together for coffee. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm worried about. Here's where I'm stuck. And you get that kind of input. You get that, gut check, slap upside the head, or validation. And you also learn a lot from helping them as well. But you're right about that. Listen to people who, built up a gigantic organization.
Who've been successful. And here's another thing that I tell people, a lot of our members, we have big conventions and directors all get together. And one of the things I ask them, because people will say, oh, I got this great idea. And I said, did you ask them where they are? We have a system in BNI, it's called traffic lights. Our top 1/4 franchise, roughly, top quartile is green. The next is yellow. The bottom half is red, and the bottom quartile is gray. And I'll say, where are they in the traffic light system? And they'll say, I don't know. Well, let's look. They'll look, oh, they're in the gray. I said, okay, take your notes and burn them. Don't do anything that person told you to do. Nothing. Because they're in the bottom quartile of the organization. You want to run your business into the ground, do what they told you to do. You want to be successful, go talk to people that are in the green. And so however that plays out in your viewers, talk to people who you know to be successful and who have similar situations. and take their advice. Don't just take the loudest voice.
Which also ties in to the point that you so often hear, that we are the average of the people who we hang out with and who we do business with. That's a good point. Well, this also then leads to what your current book project is, which is about scaling a business. I love it, from garage to global. And again, so many people are either in the great resignation migration, saying, it's my turn, I want to do my thing. Or people over 50, boomers lead millennials by 2-to-1 margin in the number of startups every year, and have a higher, a lot of people are starting their own business, and maybe they only want it to be in a garage. Maybe others have aspirations of global, but we just briefly talked about this right before the interview. I'm certainly, with my own endeavor, wanting mentor me. Give me some perspective that you're putting in this book that will be helping people grow or start.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Organizational culture is key to a successful company. Core values are the DNA of an organization. And if you aren't really clear on what your business's core values are, as you grow, as you hire people, your employees will create your core values, and you may not like them. And so it's really important that you don't have to have them overnight, but you be working on your core values. How do you work on your core values? And here, I've written about this in my blog, ivanmisner.com, but I've never seen this written quite the same way anywhere. I think core values, some of them you get right in the beginning, but some of them happen because of the processes that you implement that work. So you implement processes, they really work, you like them, those processes become your traditions. They're the things you talk about. Well, we were successful because we did this in the early days, and we had this response. So your processes become your traditions become your core values. And your core values create your culture. So as the founder of a business, as the CEO of a business, no matter how small, you got to get good with your core values early on in the process. And you have to be a culture champion. You have to be a culture champion. And you have to constantly teach people about the core values of your organization and why they're important. And for example, my CEO now, who runs the company, he starts every meeting, Zoom meeting, in-person staff meeting, with one of the core values. And he picks on somebody to talk about why. Pick a core value, any core value you want, and talk to us about why you find value in that core value. And people know they might get picked on, somebody might, I don't want to say picked on, but he might pick somebody, it could be anybody, to talk about a core value in B&I. And that's one of the ways you just keep the core values alive. And I think that's an important aspect. You want one more?
Yeah, but before we go to that, one more is, I wholeheartedly agree. To me, this is the very same thing, different semantics as, the golden circle. That when people start a business, there's the what and the how. What is it and what's the how? And very often too, is so many successful entrepreneurs and business people will say, if you're just doing it to make money, you're probably going to fail.
Yep.
But the golden circle says you start with the why. Why am I doing this? Why would someone want it? What is the purpose? What are my values behind it? And that pardon the cliche, is a true North Star that you have to adhere to, because I've heard so often that's a key to failure, of not having that.
Yeah, that's your magnetic north, no question. Is it's where you want to go, and you want to do that with your values. Your why is so important.
So you have another one for us.
I got more, and this is really important for entrepreneurs. You have to learn to work in your flame and not in your wax. When you're in your flame, you're on fire, you're excited, you love what you're doing, you're passionate about it. People can hear it in your voice, they can see it in the way you behave. When you're working in your wax, it just takes all your energy away. And people can hear that in your voice, and they can see that in the way you behave. Now, as a startup business, I remember being a startup business. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. to get to do what you want to do. But you got to have a vision about how you're going to get to your flame. For me, it was creating an organization chart. The first year of my company, I created an organization chart with 15 positions. I had 2 part-time employees who equaled 1 person. And I created a box with 15 different positions. So in every box, I would put my name for all the stuff I was doing. And there was 2 women who worked for me, and they were like in 4 boxes and I was in 11. So it was Ivan Misner, founder, CEO, Ivan Misner, director of marketing, Ivan Misner, complaint department, Ivan Misner, janitor.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I took the trash out. So my goal was to, over the next 5 years, to scratch my name out of every box that I was in and put somebody else's name in there. That was my goal. And I had that on my desk. And every time I hired somebody for one of those positions, I'd scratch their name out. I'd scratch my name out. I'd write their name in. Felt fantastic. And that was the way I worked towards working in my flame more and more and more. The one thing I did wrong, and anybody who does this, don't do the one thing I did wrong. When I was done, I thought, oh, this is great. I threw it out and I started a second one. Oh, I wish I would have kept that first chart that I created. And it was done by hand because there was no thing like PowerPoint where you can do org charts. It didn't exist. So it was 85. If I still had that original page, it would be framed and up on my wall right in front of me. So do it and create that vision to be working mostly in your flame, and let other people work in your wax, because your wax is going to be their flame. That's the key. You get people who their flame is your wax. I'll tell you one other quick story. I don't know how we are on time, but
we're great on time.
The first person that I hired for my wax was a bookkeeper. First person. I hated bookkeeping. I can work my way around a financial statement. I know how to pay bills with QuickBooks, but I hated it. It was just not my flame. So I hired a bookkeeper, and I'll never forget, Paul. It's like the second month that she was with me. She came in. She was so proud. She said it took me like 3 hours. The books weren't balanced, and it was 5 cents off. But it took me 2-3 hours. But I found it, and the books are balanced. And I congratulated her. And I told a friend of mine this, and he said, "Did you reprimand her?" I said, "Why would I reprimand her?" Because it took her 3 hours to find 5 cents. I said, no, you don't understand. What if it were $50? If it were $50, I'd say, close enough. That's close enough for me. But what if it were $500? She wouldn't go home at night. She would find that $500 no matter what. So I congratulated her. I told her, job well done. I said, I don't remember the last time the books were balanced. Why? Because that's her flame. She needed to be recognized because she was so excited and in her flame, which was totally my wax. 5 cents, really? Like I said, $50, close enough.
That's my marriage. My wife and for my content business has done the books, and that's her flame, and she loves it. And man, if you give me, I've never balanced a checkbook in my life. And fortunately, I met her in college, so I didn't really have to.
All right, so Paul, when we're done with this interview, you got to go to your honey and you got to give her a big hug. Tell her how much you love her and how much you appreciate her.
I validate her and tell her how much grateful I am for it all the time. And conversely, I do her wax. So that is a great analogy.
That makes it good for a great relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm grateful for it, Kim. I'm grateful for it. So 2 more questions, but first of all, what is the best way for people to reach you?
Well, my blog, ivanmisner.com, which I've mentioned several times, all free stuff up there, except for links to my books. It's all free content. And on Facebook, I'm probably more active I'm on all the social media platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. But I'm probably a little more active on Facebook than any of the others. So they can go there. And again, even there, it's mostly content. I really believe in building a brand by providing content. And every now and then I may pull a quote out of a book and have a link to my book, but I'm not trying to sell people stuff on my page. I want them to learn how to network and learn about the things that I'm talking about. So Facebook's a good one.
And by the way, I've been to your blog, and wow, yeah, they're at ivanmisner.com.
I've been blogging twice a week since 2007.
I mean, you're right up there with Seth Goat.
Well, Seth does daily.
Yeah, but I mean, you're close. You're close. But the point is that there is really good, valid,
Thank you,
helpful content on there. I was really impressed with it because I look at a lot of blogs and I blog, and anyway, yours was exceptional. And the new book that
well, I have several. I mean, one of my latest books is Who's in Your Room, which is about the people you surround yourself with. And Infinite Giving is a new book that I've written about Giver's Gain, the 7 principles of Giver's Gain, both of which are available on Amazon. And Who's in Your Room is a whole interview. If you ever want to do an interview on that, it's about the people that you surround yourself with in life. And then I'm working on Garage to Global, but I'm actually going to have a book out before then. So I have a long ways to go with Garage to Global.
Okay. So 2 final questions, and these bottom line, number 1 key pieces of advice. So first of all, staying with Garage to Global, for somebody that's thinking about starting up, being, and I consider being self-employed almost like the equivalent of starting a business, maybe just without capital, or starting a business. What do you think is especially if I'm starting out, if I'm thinking about that, because what I'm offering is a new way forward, getting people to launch themselves in a new direction. What's your number 1 piece of advice?
Number 1 would be do 6 things 1,000 times. But number 2 would be to remember that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that you really, which goes to your why, really. It's important that people know that you're there to really, truly help them, that you want to help people be successful. I think, we all have people that are in our story. I could tell you stories about people that changed my life. And that's powerful. But to me, the real question is not who's in our story, but whose story are we in? Whose life have we changed? Who have we helped in some way that's made a difference in their life? It's not who's in our story, it's whose story are we in?
That's brilliant. And although you've given so much advice on it, the number 1 mindset thing to keep in mind when you're networking.
With networking, it would be a VCP and also a concept that I talk about, the butterfly effect of networking. And it's important to differentiate between mindset and skill set. When people talk about networking, they mostly talk about skill set, like the 24/7/30 follow-up system, the gains exchange. Those are skill set. But mindset is critical. If you don't have the right mindset, you're not going to have the chance to do the skill set stuff. So VCP and the butterfly effect of networking. Butterfly effect is part of chaos theory, which is a division of mathematics, which talks about the flapping of the wings of a butterfly and how the flapping of the wings of a butterfly may change some minute thing in the environment that changes something, that changes something, that changes something, that changes the weather. And the butterfly effect of networking is very similar. We oftentimes meet people and we're just looking for somebody that can do something for us. And I'm here to tell you that what you want to do is you want to look for people who are good at what they do, build relationships with them, because you never know who they know and you never know who they're going to introduce you to. I remember the first time I was on Necker Island where I met Richard Branson. I'm sitting on Necker, I'm writing, I'm typing up an article, a blog that was due that day. I had no idea what I was going to write about. He walks by and he says, Necker Island's his private island. He walks by and he says, hey, what are you doing? I said, I have a deadline today. He said, oh, I get deadlines, no problem. He said, we're going to all be down by the beach and at the pool. When you're done, come on down and hang out with us, have some fun. And if I don't see you down there, sit next to me at dinner, I'd like to learn more about what you do. And I remember sitting there, Paul, going, dang, how did I get here? How did I get here where a billionaire walks by and says, hey, come on out and play. And if I don't see you on the playground and, sit next to me in the lunchroom, let's talk. And what I did was I reverse engineered how I got there. And that became my article, by the way, the butterfly effect of networking. It was 8 different relationships over 2.5 years. And it went back 2.5 years to a solopreneur life coach who some people wouldn't give the time of day to, because she wasn't, I mean, some, people in a different weight class would say, yeah, I don't want to network with that person. But I took her call. She asked for a favor. I was happy to do it. I did it, which led me to meet somebody, which led me to meet somebody, which led me to meet somebody, which led me to meet Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul,
Right.
who's now a really close friend, which led me to meet somebody, which led me to get invited to Necker Island, where I spent a week with Branson. Just came back from there 2 weeks ago for my 4th visit. I was invited back a few times. And if you go to ivanmisner.com, you'll see a blog I did with about him and legacy. So I think the other mindset is the butterfly effect. Recognize that the contact you have now, that if you build relationships, will lead to another contact, another connection, and another connection, and another connection, and amazing things can happen in your life.
No such thing as coincidence, it's coincidence.
Yep.
Dr. Misner, I've taken you over time. I apologize for that, but I couldn't help myself. This has just been absolutely fantastic. So helpful, not only to everyone watching this, but to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
If you like this, there's a lot more on YouTube. Also, there's even more on newwayforward.com. That's newwayfwd.com. There you can subscribe. You'll get a free newsletter regularly. You'll get special updates, and you'll get a free download to help you step by step get going on your new way forward.